Lester William Pulsfus in 1915 in Waukesha, Wisconsin. His folks were of German descent. Even as a young boy, Les showed an innate musical talent and deep interest in guitars and radios. Les knew from early on that he wanted to become a professional musician. Les made the decision to pursue music when a man who was working digging sewers on the street took a harmonica out of his lunch pail and began playing bluesy riffs during a break. Young Les was so enthralled by the soulful harmonica music that he jumped off the porch and rushed over to listen. The kind worker could see Les's passionate interest and gifted him the harmonica on the spot. Of course, Les says his proper Midwestern mother demanded that he sanitize and boil it thoroughly before playing it. Regardless, this gift set Les on a journey to master the harmonica, which soon led him to the guitar, of course. Over the years, Les has jokingly claimed that he now boils his guitars as a nod to his germophobic mother. After honing his harmonica skills, Les began trying every instrument he could access: saxophone, piano, banjo, and ukulele, to name a few. His parents' patience wore thin with loud instruments like drums in the household, so guitar became the perfect fit. Les practiced guitar obsessively through his teens, inspired to turn his musical passion into a full-time career. When he was 10, his mom drove him all the way down to Nashville. This was to see a performance of the iconic Grand Ole Opry radio show. That fateful night changed Les's life forever. While at the Opry, young Les had the fortune of meeting master harmonica player DeFord Bailey, one of the earliest black country music stars. DeFord was so impressed by the enthusiastic youngster that he invited Les on stage to perform with him in front of the packed auditorium in 1929. This marked Les Paul's first public performance, and it was an experience that lit a fire in him to pursue music as a career. In his teens, Les began going by stage names: Rhubarb Red for country music,
and the love shines in your eyes,
and Les Paul for jazz guitar, his two great passions. He started doing live radio broadcasts from Chicago. Under his Rhubarb Red alias, he played harmonica and sang country numbers. But as Les Paul, he explored his love of jazz guitar, inspired by greats like Django Reinhardt and Charlie Christian. Young Les Paul was always tinkering and inventing. As a teenager playing gigs in rural Wisconsin, he cobbled together a PA system and guitar amplifier using parts from his parents' ham radio equipment, along with homemade microphones and components. This allowed the young musician to play local bars and roadhouses. However, one night, a customer complained to Les that his guitar was not loud enough through the PA speakers. This sparked Les Paul's interest in finding ways to increase the volume and projection of his guitar. Les began experimenting with the physics of guitar sound. He compared the resonance and sustain of guitar strings on two very different test bodies: a large metal railroad track and a simple wooden box. The rigid steel railroad track allowed the strings to ring out much louder and longer than the flimsy wooden box. But his mother cautioned Les that while it worked in theory, imagining a cowboy strumming on a railroad track piece proved it way too impractical and bizarre for any actual performances. Taking his mother's advice, Les realized that he needed to find a way to create a wooden guitar body that could project as loudly as a metal railroad track. He spent months tinkering in his workshop, creating different wooden prototypes and pickup designs, trying to amplify a standard wooden acoustic guitar. During this era, Les performed with an incredible array of jazz legends, including Nat King Cole, Art Tatum, Louis Armstrong, and Benny Goodman. He built his reputation as an adept jazz guitarist and arranger, but he also fell in love with studio production techniques and the science behind recording. At a crossroads in his burgeoning career, Les debated whether to move to New York City or LA to further pursue his music ambitions. Unwilling to choose, he literally flipped a coin while standing outside his packed car with his wife at the time, Virginia Webb. The coin landed on New York City, so Les took it as a sign. He drove from Chicago all the way to Manhattan. Les ended up living on 48th Street in the epicenter of the city's vibrant music scene. Nearby were the iconic theaters on 51st and 53rd Streets, where legends like Tommy Dorsey and Benny Goodman held court. On one fateful day, Les crossed paths with the big band leader and inventor of the famous blender bearing his name, Fred Waring, who was using bandleader Paul Whiteman's bathroom during building renovations. Right as Waring stepped off the elevator, Les seized the chance meeting and asked if he could audition. Waring was initially dismissive, since he already had a full ensemble, but Les convinced him to listen as they rode the elevator together. Fred Waring was blown away and immediately brought Les downstairs to meet his band, the Pennsylvanians. Before he knew it, Les was hired on the spot. The elevator meeting landed him a 5-year gig performing on Waring's national broadcasts from New York City. This steady exposure helped skyrocket Les Paul to stardom and cemented his reputation on the East Coast. From that day forward, Les made New York his permanent home. Even as Les Paul's career took off in New York in the late 1930s, he continued making regular trips back to Chicago and out to L.A. In L.A., he began working extensively with major pop stars like Bing Crosby, George Burns, Gracie Allen, and Rudy Vallee. This launched Les out west, and he became ingrained in the Hollywood entertainment scene. Les Paul seemed destined for a career as a big band guitarist, arranger, and recording wizard in the motion picture industry. However, an unexpected call changed those plans and anchored him to the East Coast. The famous mouthwash company, Listerine, offered Les a sponsored radio show broadcasted live from his home 5 days a week. Listerine's headquarters were in New Jersey, so they purchased a beautiful house for Les and his wife in the suburbs near their facilities. From this new home studio, Les hosted the popular Listerine show for over 5 years, expanding his national profile. This regular Jersey gig ended Les's West Coast ambitions. Remarkably, despite once dreaming of Hollywood fame, Les remained in New Jersey and New York City for over 50 years since that Listerine opportunity surfaced. He became a fixture in the Big Apple music scene. Though he never imagined settling on the East Coast long term, all the right career developments kept Les there. In the 1930s, as Les Paul honed his guitar skills, he also studied electronics and audio engineering through books and hands-on experience with radios and recording equipment. During this era, electric guitars were in their infancy, relying on rudimentary magnetic pickups to capture and amplify the acoustic sound. Les Paul realized the key to this loud, sustained guitar tone was finding the ideal marriage of wood, pickups, and amplifiers. In 1941, after years of experimentation, Les Paul created a solid body he called the log, which was a simple wooden beam made from a 4x4 piece of pine that looked more like a fence post than a guitar. By eliminating the hollow acoustic chambers, the log produced a louder, more sustained tone. However, when Les unveiled the log at jazz clubs, the unusual shape was mocked and dismissed by audiences. So Les had this brilliant idea. He decided that to make the design more accessible, Les added 2 side wings to the log, giving it that double cutaway shape of a normal guitar. He realized that most people tend to listen with their eyes, and needed a guitar to look somewhat conventional. The next week, the log with its side wings made its debut, and audiences were blown away by its tone. However, the major guitar manufacturers still refused to adopt Les's radical solid body design, claiming it went against hundreds of years of instrumental tradition. In the late 1940s, a Gibson guitar executive named Neil DeArmond saw potential in Les's invention and suggested someday partnering to develop it further. In the meantime, Les kept playing and modifying the log, using it as his main guitar to build up his reputation. Les knew from his radio and electronics expertise that the solid wooden body produced superior resonance and sustain compared to hollow-body guitars. But he was laughed at and told repeatedly that solid-body guitars would never sell. It wouldn't be until 1950 that Gibson would approach Les to work with them on this controversial design, swayed by his persistent and unwavering vision. It would prove to be a hard-fought victory for Les after nearly a decade of rejection. The result was the legendary Gibson Les Paul model guitar, released in 1952. It revolutionized rock music and became one of the most iconic instruments of all time. Les Paul and Mary Ford met in 1945 when they were introduced by singing cowboy star Gene Autry. Born Iris Colleen Summers in California in 1924, she came from a very musical family. Both of her parents were traveling gospel singers, and several of her siblings became professional musicians as well. As a young woman, Iris pursued her own singing career and eventually eventually met Les Paul, who was going through a divorce from his first wife at the time. The two quickly hit it off, both personally and professionally. They had to keep their relationship somewhat quiet due to Les still being married. In 1948, while driving through Oklahoma with Les, Iris was in a terrible car accident that seriously injured Les Paul and left him unable to play the guitar for over a year. His right arm was in such bad shape that the doctor was considering having to amputate it. But Les told the doctor if there was any way possible, he could just point his hand toward his belly button, putting his right arm at a permanent 90-degree angle, and he could take it from there. The doctor was able to do so, saving his arm, but from then on, Les Paul could not bend his right arm straight. Iris nursed Les back to health and moved in with him, taking care of his daily needs. It was during this time that Iris Summers became Mary Ford. She took on the new name as she and Les began planning their future career as a musical duo. By 1949, they were married, and the following year they began appearing on the pop charts together as a duo act. Once Les recovered enough to play again, he and Mary started recording and releasing songs together. With Mary providing the vocals and Les adding his innovative guitar playing, they became a hit act in the early 50s. Songs like How High the Moon, The World is Waiting for a Sunrise, and Vaya con Dios were huge chart toppers for the duo. From August 1952 through March 1953, they were virtually unstoppable, rattling off another string of 5 top 10 hits, including My Baby's Coming Home, Lady of Spain, and of course, their career-defining smash Vaya con Dios, which was number 1 for 11 weeks. In total, Les Paul and Mary Ford placed over 20 songs in the pop charts during their heyday.
When the relatives come to visit you, there's no place like home.
Their innovative use of overdubbing technology allowed Les and Mary to create a full, layered studio sound that perfectly blended his guitar mastery with her velvety vocals. Their 1954 take on I'm a Fool to Care continued their chart dominance, peaking at number 6. Decades later, that song was featured in a Southern Comfort ad. At their peak, Les Paul and Mary Ford completely owned the pop charts, churning out hit after hit. Their uncanny chemistry and technical innovations made them the powerhouse couple of early 50s music. Though soon, rock and roll would change the landscape, but still the duo did make an indelible mark on pop music in their short time together at the top. Through it all, Mary Ford's singing talents were essential to the pair's success.
Somewhere there's music, how faint the tune. Somewhere there's heaven, how high the moon.
Her versatile voice provided the perfect complement to Les Paul's guitar wizardry. However, as it happens with famous male and female duos, Ford's contributions were overshadowed by her more recognized partner. With the rise of rock and roll, the duo's popularity began to wane. Behind the scenes, their marriage was also under strain. Les filed for divorce from Mary in 1963, alleging adultery on her part with various men, including cowboy singer Foy Willing. Though their accusations were never proven, the divorce proceedings were contentious. Les was granted custody of their young son. Mary Ford struggled to find solo success after the divorce. She made some recordings on her own, but failed to reignite her career. Forming a singing group with her sisters also met with little success. In her personal life, Mary went through multiple divorces and is said to have developed problems with alcohol. Her fourth and final marriage was to her childhood sweetheart from back home, perhaps in an attempt to recapture more innocent times. Though they created their hits together, Les Paul achieved lasting fame while Mary Ford drifted into obscurity. Sadly, as Mary aged, she did not take good care of her health. After lapsing into a diabetic coma in 1977 at the young age of 53, she passed away just 8 weeks later. It was a tragic and premature end for a woman who had once stood at the top of the music world. In 1965, Les Paul decided to take a step back from the limelight, opting for semi-retirement. Despite his reduced activity, Les Paul still continued to leave his mark on the music scene. One of his notable projects during this period was the album Les Paul Now, released in 1968. In this album, Paul revisited some of his earlier hits, laying down the initial guitar tracks while George Barnes added additional layers, all engineered by Les himself in his home studio. In 1969, Les Paul ventured into production, overseeing the album Poe Through the Glass Prism. This unique project featured songs inspired by the writings of Edgar Allan Poe, performed by the northeastern Pennsylvania band The Glass Prism. The album even spawned a single titled The Raven, which made its way onto Billboard's Hot 100 chart. Additionally, Les recorded 2 albums, Chester and Lester in 1976, with Chet Atkins, and also Guitar Monsters in 1978. These albums showcased a fusion of jazz and country improv, with Les and Chet accompanied by some of Nashville's top studio musicians of the day. As years rolled on, Les Paul continued to perform, though at a much slower pace. He had adapted his playing style to accommodate his arthritic hands, opting for a larger pick that was easier to grasp. Les picked up a regular gig at Fat Tuesdays in New York City, starting in 1987, which lasted until 1994. In 1987, Les Paul celebrated his 72nd birthday, which was put on by Gibson Guitars at the Hard Rock Cafe in New York City on June 11th. And he did it with a bang. Those present to jam with him were none other than Jimmy Page, Jeff Beck, Al Di Meola, as well as Tony Bennett, who completely stole the show. It was around this time Les Paul and Eddie Van Halen struck up an instant friendship. Their camaraderie was highlighted during a special moment in 1988 at the Les Paul and Friends tribute concert.
I just want to say one thing, that without the things that you have done, I couldn't do half the things that I can do now, including, the echo stuff.
Well, forget your married wife.
No, wait a minute. No.
This event, hosted at the Brooklyn Academy of Music in New York, wasn't just any concert. It was a full-on tribute to Les Paul, a living legend at the time, celebrated for his monumental contributions to the music industry as both a guitarist and an inventor. The concert gathered a wealth of musical talents, all there to honor Les Paul, with Eddie Van Halen among the distinguished performers. After Eddie Van Halen's electrifying performance, which included renditions of Cathedral, and a hopped-up instrumental version of Hot for Teacher, alongside Tony Levin on bass and Jan Hammer on keyboards. Les Paul presented Eddie with a very unique gift. It was a custom-made variant of the Les Paul guitar model, tailored specifically for Eddie Van Halen. This wasn't just any guitar. It was a symbol of Les's appreciation and recognition of Eddie's talent. Despite the guitar's beauty, Eddie jokingly said that it was turned to shit after Les Paul added a Floyd Rose tremolo to it. But it was the only Les Paul guitar authorized by the man himself that had that type of tremolo system. Of course, in reality, the guitar became one of Eddie's treasured keepsakes. Eddie Van Halen and Les Paul hung out together again in 2007 when Les Paul visited Van Halen before a show in New Jersey. Les Paul decided he wanted to learn some of Eddie's two-hand tapping technique. So Eddie's son Wolfgang tried to show it to him, but Les quickly gave up and said, "Hell no, I cannot do this." Les Paul became a regular fixture at Manhattan's Iridium Jazz Club, where he performed every Monday night alongside guitarist Lou Pallo, bassist Paul Nowinski, later joined by Nicky Parrott, guitarist Frank Vignola, and for a stint, pianist John Coliani. So many notable musicians took the opportunity to jam with and show their respect for Les during this time, including Eddie Van Halen, Joe Satriani.
Now, I hope this guy don't play the blues and no one knows it.
Keith Richards, Billy Gibbons, Zakk Wylde, and Joe Walsh, to name a few. Les also jammed with his godson and former guitar student, Steve Miller. In 2006, at the age of 90, Les clinched 2 Grammy Awards at the 48th Annual Grammy Awards for his album Les Paul and Friends, American Made World Played. This album features so many legends, including Eric Clapton, Jeff Beck, Neil Schon, and others. Twice a week, Les continued to play on, and on his regular gig, he was bringing guests from far and wide. Arthritis had affected his hands, but he was still playing his heart out, and when he needed to, he would just rest his hands and let somebody else take over soloing for a while.
Where'd you get that hat, that garb? What is that?
Your hat's one of yours.
Is it?
Yeah.
It's mine now, huh?
You like it?
Oh my God! Oh, a hairless auto. Well, you just pick a key and start playing and watch how fast we pick it up.
Oh my.
Les Paul never truly retired. He had just taken a long break and got right back in action and stayed that way all the way to the end. On August 12, 2009, Les Paul passed away due to complications from pneumonia at White Plains Hospital in White Plains, New York. His departure stirred an outpouring of tributes from fellow musicians, highlighting his profound impact on the music world. Slash, from Guns N' Roses, remembered him as vibrant and full of positive energy, while Richie Sambora hailed him as a revolutionary in the music business. The Edge emphasized Paul's enduring legacy as both a musician and an inventor, asserting that his influence on rock and roll would be immortal. On August 21st, 2009, Les Paul was laid to rest at Prairie Home Cemetery in Waukesha, Wisconsin, where he had spent his formative years. Throughout his illustrious career, Les Paul garnered numerous awards and honors, a testament to his groundbreaking contributions to music and technology. Notably, he was inducted into the National Inventors Hall of Fame in 2005 for his pioneering work on the solid-body electric guitar. His influence reverberated through various halls of fame, including the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in 1988, the Songwriters Hall of Fame in 2005, the Big Band and Jazz Hall of Fame in 1990, and the New Jersey Hall of Fame in 2010. Les Paul's musical prowess was further recognized with Grammy Hall of Fame entries for the iconic tracks like How High the Moon and Via Con Dios. He clinched Grammy Awards for Best Country Instrumental with Chet Atkins in 1976, Best Pop Instrumental, Caravan, in 2005, and Best Rock Instrumental, 69 Freedom Special in 2005. His enduring contributions to audio technology earned him prestigious accolades such as the Grammy Trustees Award for Lifetime Achievement in 1983 and the Special Merit Technical Grammy Award in 2001. Beyond the music industry, Les Paul's impact to popular culture, with honors like a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame with Mary Ford in 1960, and recognition from Time magazine as one of the top 10 electric guitarists of all time in 2009. Rolling Stone also ranked him as the 18th greatest guitarist of all time in 2011. Les Paul's legacy continues to resonate, cementing a place as a true titan in the annals of music history. Around 1995, I had the pleasure of meeting Les Paul. He struck me like that really cool uncle, very upbeat and personable. It was at the Iridium in New York City, and before he started playing, he was at a table having dinner. I approached him, and he stood up and he gave me a very hearty handshake. I was taken aback by how he stood up and thrust his right hand forward, and then I remembered how his right arm had been stuck in that 90-degree angle since his accident many decades before. And you know what? It didn't faze him one bit. So Les Paul asked me, "Hey, what kind of guitar you got?" And I smiled and I said, "A 1992 Les Paul Studio." And he smiled and he said, "That's a great guitar." I watched as he greeted others at his table, and Les was so down to earth, funny as hell, and just put everybody around him at ease. Les then proceeded toward the stage, placing his hands on the shoulders of audience members as props to help him stay balanced. Once on stage, he sat down and kept the audience completely mesmerized for an hour and a half. He was wailing on that guitar, clean and precise. Out of nowhere, he'd all of a sudden crack a joke or do some goofy down-tuning of his guitar, which would just have the place in stitches. When he played Somewhere Over the Rainbow, there was not a dry eye in the house. I'll never forget that night. Les Paul made it an awesome experience. Some music legends are entertainers at heart. Some are such virtuosos that their instrument does all the talking. But Les Paul, he was the entire package. He was a mind-blowing guitarist, amazing inventor, and one of the best entertainers the stage has ever seen. And yet he never acted like it. Les Paul just simply loved what he did. So if you like what you see here, feel free to join the family and subscribe. And while you're at it, kindly smack that like button. I do appreciate it. And thank you so much for watching.